Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, today we are tackling something incredibly fascinating. Usually we're sifting through massive research papers or deep diving into these lengthy, dense articles to pull out the key takeaways, but today we're doing the exact opposite. We are going to take just one single foundational sentence and literally break it apart piece by piece. By just slowing down our pace and really examining the structure of a core statement that defines human education, we can uncover this surprisingly deep framework. It's kind of like a giant puzzle, an exercise in seeing what happens when we look super closely at the architecture of language and thought. Let's explore how a handful of words can carry the weight of an entire discipline.
Concept and nature of teaching and learning. Let that linger for just a second. 7 words. That's our entire source text for today's explainer. Crazy, right? It is stark in its brevity. There's no verb, there's no definitive conclusion. It's really just a framework, this suspended fragment of thought. Yet within these 7 perfectly chosen words lies a highly compressed, totally self-contained ecosystem of meaning. Honestly, when you strip away all the methodologies and the endless debates about pedagogy, this right here is the bedrock you're left with. It is the minimal viable sentence required to define the whole field.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got to start by focusing purely on the very first grammatical pairing, concept and nature. We really need to pause and ask ourselves, why does the source pair these 2 specific nouns right out of the gate? Well, it's presenting us with this profound duality. Notice it doesn't just say the concept of our subject, and it doesn't just say the nature. It absolutely insists on both. It demands that we recognize the subject as having 2 distinct dimensions that have to be examined side by side. Because think about it, if the text only focused on the concept, it would remain pure theory. But if it only focused on the nature, it would lack a guiding principle. So, to really grasp this, we have to probe the boundaries of these 2 words. How does a theoretical idea, the concept of a thing, fundamentally differ from its inherent actual reality, its nature? Think of the concept as the blueprint. It's the theoretical design drawn up in your mind. Actually, scratch that. It's more like the perfect, ideal definition of a thing before it hits the real world. But the nature? Well, the nature is the lived reality. It's the messy, organic truth of how that thing behaves when it's released out into the wild. By throwing concept versus nature side by side, our source text forces us to acknowledge that to truly understand anything, you absolutely must master both its theory and its actual lived reality.
And then we hit this tiny, seemingly insignificant word, of. It's just 2 letters, but man, it is the absolute structural hinge of this entire text. It's the fulcrum upon which this whole philosophical seesaw balances. This single preposition takes all that abstract, heavy theoretical weight we just unpacked, the concept, the nature, and it suddenly points it directly toward a target. It abruptly shifts us away from the abstract realm of philosophy and right into the actionable realm of real subjects. It's basically telling us that all the theory we just discussed is about to be applied to something very real. Without the word of, we're just floating in existential thought. But with it, we're firmly tethered.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Here are the specific subjects that all that abstract concept and nature are being applied to. Teaching and learning. The suspense created by the word of is finally resolved. That grand theoretical framework lands squarely on the most human of interactions. We aren't looking at the concept and nature of the cosmos or of mathematics. No, we are looking at the transfer of knowledge itself. It takes the heavy philosophical weight of concept and nature and places it directly onto the shoulders of educators and students. It completely elevates the everyday act of sharing knowledge into a subject worthy of the deepest intellectual scrutiny.
Now, look at how these 2 foundational pillars stand together. Teaching versus learning. Why in the world does our source inextricably link them together with the word and rather than separating them? I mean, this easily could have been an analysis about teaching alone or learning alone. But the text absolutely refuses to isolate them. That word and acts as an unbreakable chain. It's suggesting that you cannot possibly examine the concept and nature of one without simultaneously examining the concept and nature of the other. They are locked in this perpetual dynamic dance. To study teaching without learning is like studying a radio broadcast with no receivers out there. The conjunction makes them completely 100% interdependent.
If we lay the words out chronologically, we really reveal the logical, directional flow of the text. It methodically takes us on a journey. Step 1. We begin with the concept, the absolute highest level of abstract thought. Step 2. We move to the nature, the inherent reality of existence. Step 3. We descend into teaching, which is the active, outward projection of instruction. And finally, Step 4. We arrive at learning, the ultimate destination, the receptive understanding. It is this perfect cascade from the conceptual mind right down into human action and reaction. It seamlessly guides us from intangible ideas out into the shared physical space of knowledge exchange.
Let's isolate just this single action for a second. Teaching. If you look at it purely as a mechanical part of the sentence, sure, it's just a word, a gerund, an action sitting midway through a short phrase. But when we slow down and truly focus on what this word embodies, you begin to feel the immense responsibility it carries within this framework. Teaching is the active force. It is the intentional reaching out from one mind to another. It's the catalyst in this entire equation, holding the entire burden of initiating the transfer of understanding. Without this outward push, all that theoretical foundation we built up earlier, it would just remain static, locked away without any vehicle for delivery.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it makes learning the mandatory counterpart. If teaching is the catalyst, learning is the realization. Our source text creates a completely necessary symbiotic duality here. Learning isn't just some byproduct, it is literally the entire reason the structure exists in the first place. You can see how the text demands we view them as a synchronized pair. Learning receives the weight the teaching pushes forward. It's the soil to the seed, right? The echo to the voice. It represents the internal synthesis of the outward action. The framework recognizes that without this final absorption, the initial exertion of teaching energy is essentially void.
And this brilliantly illustrates that the grammar of our source text demands absolute parity. The text doesn't say teaching and, maybe a little bit of learning. By pairing them evenly, right around the conjunction and, teaching and learning are treated as a perfectly balanced 50-50 semantic whole. They are equal halves of the exact same circle. One doesn't hold more weight than the other in the architectural framework of our text, and that is a subtle but incredibly profound statement. It elevates the student to the exact same level of importance as the educator. The recipient of knowledge isn't just a passive vessel, but an equally vital, load-bearing pillar in the structure of the phrase itself.
So the crucial point is, when we bring all the pieces back together and look at the complete text once more, it's clearly no longer just a simple string of 7 words. We can now see the profound, perfectly balanced philosophical architecture hidden right inside it. We see the duality of the theoretical and the real pivoting on that single little preposition and pouring directly into the perfectly balanced, symbiotic acts of human instruction and reception. It's honestly a masterpiece of semantic efficiency. Every single word carries its weight, and every conjunction builds a bridge. It just goes to show that sometimes the absolute most robust frameworks are also the most concise.
Which leaves us with a final thought today, drawn directly from the inescapable connection forged in our text. If the concept and nature of these two things are so fundamentally fused by the word and, can teaching truly exist without learning? Seriously, if the signal is sent but never actually received, did the act of teaching actually happen according to the nature of this text? I want you to take that deep, inescapable duality with you. It's a question that challenges the very foundation of how we measure success when sharing knowledge. Thanks so much for joining me on this thoughtful journey through language and meaning. Catch you next time.